When I was a kid, about 9 or 10 years old, my life was turned upside down in a way that I couldn't have imagined. My father, who had always been a hard worker but never held a particularly high-paying job, managed to secure an incredible opportunity. He got a high-paying position with a prestigious company, and it meant we had to relocate. We were moving from a small, quiet town in rural Pennsylvania to the bustling, upscale suburb of Brookmont, Maryland. I often tell people that it felt like we were forced to move, but it was more of a decision made by my parents with excitement, and not really a choice for me. They were thrilled by the prospects that the move brought, and they barely hesitated to make it happen. For me, at 9 years old, it was a massive change, one I wasn't sure how to process. We moved within a month of the news, and the transition was swift and dramatic. I went from living in a small, cramped house in a rundown neighborhood to a sprawling estate in one of the most prestigious parts of Maryland. The shift was like night and day. Where we used to struggle to make ends meet, now we had more than enough to live comfortably. I didn't really grasp the gravity of the change, especially because I had no deep-rooted connections or friendships to leave behind in Pennsylvania. I was a quiet child, and my circle of friends was small, almost non-existent. So, the idea of leaving behind a life that didn't involve many personal attachments didn't bother me. My parents, however, were eager to give me a new, better life, one that was full of opportunity. In a way, I accepted the change without too much resistance. The house in Brookmont was massive, larger than anything I could have imagined as a kid. It was perfect. At that age, I couldn't really appreciate all the finer details, but I knew I was living in a place that was special. But what stood out the most about our new home wasn't just the size, it was the backyard. I had 2 older brothers, Sean and Harold, and the backyard quickly became the center of all of our activities. Unlike our old home, where the yard was small and uninspiring, this one stretched for what felt like miles. The best part was the treehouse, which was located in a secluded corner of the yard, hidden by a dense grove of tall trees that made the area feel like a private sanctuary. This wasn't just any treehouse. It wasn't a simple wooden platform thrown together haphazardly, like you might see in most backyards. No, this treehouse was impressive. It was a massive structure built across 6 or 7 trees, connected by sturdy wooden bridges and complete with 3 levels. It had a full staircase leading up to it, a solid roof, and walls that made it more of a tree fort than a mere playhouse. From the outside, it looked like something out of a childhood dream. The best part? It felt like it was our secret world, one that belonged to no one else. My brothers and I spent hours there, making up games and pretending we were pirates, explorers, or knights. Those first few months were filled with joy and excitement, and I remember feeling like the world was a place of endless possibility. However, over time, things started to change. My brothers, who were older and had more pressing interests, began to lose interest in the treehouse. Sean and Harold grew bored with it, and they started spending their time elsewhere. It was inevitable. They'd outgrown the treehouse, and I was left alone to play in it. At first, I was okay with it. I didn't mind being on my own, but as days turned into weeks, I began to feel a sense of loneliness creeping in. The treehouse, which once had been a place of adventure and joy, now felt empty and forlorn. I begged my brothers to come back, but they refused. They would tease me, saying I was too old to be playing in the treehouse, and it wasn't cool anymore. Then, one day, I went up to the treehouse to find something strange. Nestled in the corner of the second floor was a small piece of paper. It was folded neatly, and it looked like it had been there for a while. I remember feeling a mix of curiosity and excitement, assuming it was one of my brothers playing some kind of prank. But when I unfolded the paper, I found something I didn't expect. Written on it in messy handwriting were the words, "Hello, I'm the Marshmallow Man. It's nice to meet you. What's your name?" I thought it was a joke at first, maybe from one of my brothers trying to make the treehouse fun again. But the next day, there was another note. This one simply read, "What's your favorite toy?" The more I found, the stranger they became. Some of the notes were simple, asking things like, "Do you like playing outside?" or "What's your favorite color?" But then the questions started getting a little more personal. "What time do you usually wake up?" and "What do you eat for breakfast?" My initial excitement turned to confusion. I had no idea who was behind these notes, and none of my brothers would admit to leaving them. I confronted them, but they denied everything. They laughed and told me I was imagining things. I didn't believe them, but I didn't know what else to think. Then, one day, the notes took a more unsettling turn. The Marshmallow Man started asking increasingly strange and personal questions, like "What do your pajamas smell like?" and "Which window is your bedroom?" I remember the chill that ran down my spine when I saw that question. My mind raced. It wasn't just a game anymore. It felt like someone was watching me. I decided to confront my brothers again, sure that one of them was behind the notes. But again, they laughed it off, saying I was being paranoid. They told me I needed to grow up. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I spent the next few nights lying awake, waiting for whoever was behind the notes to show up. Then, one evening, I heard a soft tapping at my window. My heart immediately started racing. It was faint at first, almost imperceptible, but it grew louder. Tap, tap, tap. I lay frozen in my bed, unable to move. It wasn't the sound of a branch against the window, this was purposeful. I could hear it clearly. Tap, tap, tap. I eventually gathered the courage to look outside, but when I did, I saw nothing. The tapping stopped. But the feeling of unease lingered. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stayed awake, listening intently for any more noises, my mind racing with thoughts of the notes and the mysterious tapping. Finally, I must have drifted off, because when I woke up the next morning, my heart nearly stopped. Outside my window, stuck to the glass with tape, were dozens of marshmallows. It wasn't a prank. It wasn't something my brothers had done. This was something else. I felt a cold shiver run down my spine as I stared at the marshmallows. They were perfectly arranged, covering the window like someone had carefully placed them there, one by one. I felt violated, like my privacy had been completely invaded. The idea that someone was leaving me these notes and watching me from the shadows was terrifying. That night, I decided I wouldn't let this go on anymore. I stayed up, determined to catch whoever it was. I tried to remain calm, but the sense of fear was overwhelming. As night fell, I waited. And just like before, the tapping started again. I didn't hesitate this time. I threw open the curtains, ready to confront whoever was out there. But what I saw made my blood run cold. Standing outside my window was not one of my brothers. It was an old man, with yellow eyes and a twisted, rotting grin. His teeth were decayed, and his hair was patchy and unkempt. He looked like something from a nightmare, like a creature who had crawled out of the darkest corners of my mind. He stared at me with a grin that seemed too wide for his face, his eyes gleaming in the darkness. My scream was primal, loud, and filled with terror. I backed away from the window, my heart pounding in my chest. The man just stood there, grinning, until I screamed again, and my parents rushed into the room. When they arrived, the man was gone. The police were called, and they searched the property, including the treehouse, but they found no trace of him. There were no footprints, no clues, nothing to suggest who or what had been lurking outside. It was as if he had never been there. They couldn't find any evidence, and the case went cold. My parents were disturbed, but they tried to reassure me that it was just a bad dream or some prank gone too far. But I couldn't forget what I saw. I couldn't unsee that grinning face in the dark. I never went near the treehouse again, and neither did my brothers. It was off limits from that moment on. The police investigation turned up nothing, and eventually, my parents moved on, though the incident never truly left me. To this day, when I go back to visit my parents, I can't help but look at the treehouse from a distance, my stomach twisting with unease. I can't shake the feeling that something dark and sinister is connected to that place. Even now, the memory of the man outside my window haunts me, and I can't escape the sense of terror that lingers with me.